In any democratic state, one of the fundamental rights that the citizens will enjoy is the freedom to air their views and their opinion. And when government seems to shrink the civic space by attacking dissent, then the democracy in such a country will be a danger in whatever sense you might look at it. Will we forget what happened to Joan Sabiri in 2016, who was incarcerated without trial for about 2-3 years? And he was released just this year. And I don't know whether his life will still be back again the way he wanted it to be. We cannot forget the attack on Jafar in Kano State this year as well. You also remember what happened to Daily Trust in Abuja and in Maiduguri, where operatives of the security went into their offices and stopped them from production. It is an affront against democracy and free press, and there is no democracy without free press. Nigeria needs to be able to air their views, and government should not see journalists or the press as an extension of their public relations department. We need to report events as they are and issues as they are. But attached to these rights and privileges, particularly the freedom of speech and expression, every individual who is involved in this business must know that there is a responsibility attached to every freedom. So journalists must be responsible for truth, for facts, which is sacrosanct, and they also must allow everybody to air their views and balance their reportage.
I do think that the space for freedom has reduced in Nigeria. Looking at the events of 2019, retrospectively, you can see that there were several defining moments as regards the incidents of police brutality, from the NSARS campaign to the numerous pleas and cries for help from ordinary Nigerians on the repressive and often brutal nature of the police, to the heavy-handedness of the Department of State Security Services in rearresting Omoyele Sowore. I think that a common thread that runs through all of these issues is a failure in governance. My view is that police brutality would likely not exist or be driven down to a bare minimum if the government can deliver on its mandates for providing the amenities for which it was voted in for. There would be less reactions by citizens. There would be less need for citizens to eke out their livings, and I suspect that they would be more useful to themselves and to the society if the economy is doing better.
Nigeria's border closure and ban on food imports, especially rice, is one of the issues that has really defined the state of freedom in Nigeria this year. And when I mean state of freedom, I mean economic freedom. The economic freedom of Nigerians to buy what they want, to consume what they want and what they can afford. In August, after Nigeria closed its borders with Benin Republic and Niger Republic, we saw a sharp increase in the prices of food items, especially rice, and even many other commodities. And 2 months after then, in October, rice was selling for about 800 naira per bowl, up from about 500, which is about 60% increase in price. For a lot of Nigerians that are living below the poverty line, surviving in the last few months has become more problematic for them. Of course, one of the other rationale behind this is the fact that there's smuggling of petroleum from Nigeria to Benin Republic, subsidized petrol in Nigeria being smuggled to Benin Republic where it's not being subsidized and it's being sold for higher prices there. Of course, that should be curbed, but it should be curbed in a way that Nigerians don't have to suffer the consequences of that.
We cannot talk about issues that define the state of freedom in Nigeria in 2019 and not mention the general elections. Of course, elections are critical. Looking at election trends since 1999 in Nigeria, the 2019 general elections had the lowest voters turnout, which was at 35%. Imagine that 28 million out of about 82 million people, registered voters, was at the polls to elect their representative. This is caused by violence. Nigerians now do not believe that their vote counts. Nigerians are scared because every time there is election in Nigeria, people die, properties get destroyed, and people don't trust this anymore. We understand that Nigeria is just 20 years into democracy, but for us to become a developed democracy, Nigeria needs to ensure that the electoral process is free and fair, so that Nigerians can begin to participate in the electoral process and elect leaders of their choice, as that is the only way that good governance can be delivered via elections to the people.
There has been a noticeable decline in adherence to rule of law in Nigeria, obviously through the proxy of obeying court orders. So if the executive arm continues to flout the pronouncements of the courts, then who really can keep the executive in check if its sister arm, the judiciary, is being ignored? From Zakzaki's custody and the refusal of the federal government to release him, to the former director of the NSA, Sambo Dasuki, and the federal government's flouting of an ECOWAS ruling, to the Showore issue that is before our very eyes. Those things alone and the several other incidences that have happened show that if the government itself cannot be held accountable to itself, then who really can hold the government accountable? And that kind of dovetails into the want for protest and the pushback from civil society to the government that says, hey, you need to keep yourself in check. We put you there, and we will tell you and remind you and put pressure on you to behave. Those are all examples of how freedom is reducing, because if civil society feels it's not safe, if civil society feels that the government that has the legitimate power of coercion cannot be held accountable, then who really can we rely on as a people? These are things that we really need to think about as the year winds down, and strive as much as we can to ensure that 2020 is a much better year for all of us. Thank you.